This sitting is resumed.
We committal of government notices.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of a resolution to grant the sum of $51,662,227 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2021 to 2022 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 6, 2021 to 2022.
Government business. Resume. Order number 9, sir. In the name of the Honourable Leader of the House, to move that the House resolve itself into Standing Finance Committee to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of this item.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into Standing Finance Committee.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into Standing Finance Committee. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
This House is in Standing Finance Committee.
Madam Chair, in the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $51,662,227 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2021 to 2022 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 6, 2021 to 2022, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 13, Prime Minister's Office, in the amount of $9,463,912.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, this sum of $9,463,912 is divided into 3 programs, and I will go through them one by one so that the general public has the opportunity to understand what it is that we are undertaking in the Prime Minister's office. So, under Head 13, sorry. So we start off by looking at the sum of $700,158. This is required for what we term the road program. You would have heard us a week ago speak about the archives, and part and parcel of what we were doing and what we are doing at this point in time is seeking to monetize that treasure that we have of information that resides in the archives here in Barbados. For many years now, we've been hearing people calling for the diversification of the economy. And one of the things that we recognize is that we have a perfect opportunity under what we call the orange economy or the creative economy to do such. And this program is one where we are seeking to ensure that Barbadians and the rest of the world have the opportunity to use that wealth of information that resides within the archives in a positive way for scholars, for students, or for those persons who definitely want to know a little bit more about the contribution of Barbados to the world history and also the migration of people throughout the world. Within the archives, we have the second largest register of ships coming from Africa on that transatlantic slave trade, second only to Britain itself. Within that amount of information, there are stories that have value. And we are seeking now to monetize that value. And in doing so, we have to acquire the services of persons who have been involved in activities such as this for a much longer period than we have. But we are also getting the expertise to digitize all of that information so that it becomes easily accessible, like I said before, to scholars, to students, and to being able to use that information to tell the story, the human story, in a much different way. As we also seek conversations now when we talk about reparations and all of these things, inside of those stories, I am clear in my mind that you will find things that can help in getting the rest of the world to understand the importance of that. And so it is important that at this juncture of our development, as Barbados has moved to a republic, as we seek to be leaders on the world stage, in this particular area, we're seeking that money to engage professionals in this area. We're looking at, like I said before, the digitization of all of that information, which we certainly don't want to lose, as was the case in South Africa. A lot of the information was lost due to fire. We are subject to hurricanes and all sorts of things now with climate change, and these funds are really there to help with that. Under that same program, we're also seeking $633,000 to finish a program, or a project, rather I should say, that was started in 2001. What is this project that I'm speaking of? I'm speaking about the Rock Hall, Freedom Park, and Freedom Village project. Now, under this project, a number of things were done. A monument was erected in 2005, and shops were built to establish entrepreneurship within the area, and also to drive tourists there to at least begin some activities that the persons within that area could benefit from. Unfortunately, over the years, that project seemed to have stalled for whatever reason, and in coming to office in 2018, one of the first things we had to do was to restart that project. Now, in restarting that project, a number of things came up that probably were not anticipated in the initial costings for this particular project. There was supposed to be a link bridge which would take you from the existing shops, which we've now finished repairing again, over to the monument, so making it easier access for persons with disabilities or anybody at all to get across what you could call a gully or a ravine to get up to the monument. Once we started the work there, we realized that the plans that were in place to just put in a simple bridge were not going to be able, they're not feasible in today's world, where you have to ensure that you have access for persons with disabilities. And so we had to build a completely different plan. We had to create a different plan to satisfy that need. But also when we get into the ground, dealing with the geological aspects of it, then we had to do a lot more reinforcing than was anticipated. And so for this particular project, again, we're seeking monies to complete phase 2. And in this phase 2, what we have done, as I speak now, some of it is going on. The actual ramps to crossover have been completed. There's an amphitheater that has gone in with a nice stage to, again, encourage creatives and others like that to make use of the space. But what is needed now is the balustrading to ensure that there are no accidents or no problems with people crossing over. And that is set to be done as we speak here. And once we get that finished, then that's the end of phase 2. And then there's phase 3 and phase 4, which we will be looking at in the next set of estimates. But we're hoping to use this money to make sure that by the end of this year or early next year that we complete phase 2 of this project. The other two programs that are involved there are all for flood mitigation. This has been a problem that Barbadians have been complaining about for a very long time. One of them is in Speightstown, where I know the Honourable representative for that area will be glad to know that we're trying to ensure that we deal with that, and also in Bridgetown. So with that, I just wanted to give some sort of an outlay of what it is we're seeking to do with these funds. And also the last but not least on the agenda is the redevelopment of some areas in Bridgetown. As you can see, we did a fantastic job recently with Golden Square, and then some of these surrounding areas still need to be beautified as we try to make our historic city one that stands out in the rest of the world. So with those very few words, I'd like to ask that okay. Yeah, that Head 13 stand by.
Recognize the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this Head 13, apart from the sub-programs related to culture and the beautification of Bridgetown, there are also two other projects for which the Ministry of Investment, Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc. is responsible. Under Program 299, Sub-Program 356 is the Speightstown Flood Mitigation Project. And the sum of $1 million to be able to finalize those works. Now, this is continues to be an extremely important project that Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. has been executing in the north of the country. As I stand here, I can feel the relief of the member for St. Peter. That we have brought those works to a close, and in fact, I was anxious, and the member for who spoke before me would have felt my anxiety to be able to get to my feet, to be able to say that we expect to be able to declare that project open as of the 23rd of December. I cannot say that that event will happen, but I do feel quite pleased to be able to report to this honourable place, and in particular through you, Madam Chair, to the member for St. Peter, that those flood mitigation works have come to a close. We are finalizing and will be able, before the end of this month, to be able to declare that those works officially open and in use. This has been very important for the north of the island, and I will not pretend or dare to speak on behalf of the honourable member, but certainly from the perspective of all of the efforts that we've been making in terms of the climate crisis, issues related to sea level rise, issues related to our drainage systems, and how we're able to adapt to the climate crisis. This has been one of the specific concrete activities that we have been able to execute, and these monies are to be able to bring those works fully to a close within this calendar year. The second, under Program 299, again, sub-program 357, the Constitution Flood Mitigation Project, which we expect to be finished next year, hopefully by the end of the first quarter, if all goes well. We've been seeing, Madam Chair, lots of different weather patterns that we didn't expect. October was very wet. November, comparatively, was quite dry. And so works have to adjust to those weather patterns. I was able this morning, along with the honourable member for St. George South, to visit the site, not necessarily to look at the works themselves, but to look at the ancillary works that we will be doing on the embankment, the building blocks project that will see kiosks provided. We call it, and together with the member for the City of Bridgetown, we call it the Halls Road Commercial Village, that we also expect to be completed alongside this project, as a part of this project. As I've mentioned before, these works include creating a berth for small boats. We want to make sure that along with Golden Square, with Queen's Park, that the beautification of Bridgetown is a part of an entire new energy and new breath for the city of Bridgetown and its environs. And so, certainly as a member for St. Michael South Central, I am pleased to be able to see these works advancing. And so this sum of $4 million is to be able to advance those works. With those words, I thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would not have been able to not say a few words on this, in this debate on this particular supplementary Head 13, I think it is, particularly because it relates to, and as you've heard quite eloquently put by the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, an issue that's been challenging the residents and the businesses of Speightstown, and also those who traverse for quite some time, and that is the matter of flooding. And I thought I needed just to say a few words. I'm not going to detain the House very long, but I needed to say a few words because I think one of my constituents put it very well to me last night. And I feel I need to say it because this government of which I'm a part, I think ought to be proud of the work that it is doing. This lady, I haven't received permission to call her name, but she's a resident of Speightstown. And she and two others who I interacted with last night, while standing next to the canal, said to me, you know, over the years we have heard a lot of people talk about getting this matter addressed, but you and the government have finally got it done. And I think this government ought to be commended. I will commend the government because I didn't do it myself. I will commend this administration of which I'm a part for actually doing something to alleviate not just the flooding that takes place, but to address the fears. And I speak to this because while we're in a pandemic situation, lots of us have recognized that mental health, what affects a person's mind, is critical. And I represent people who, when the rain falls in Speightstown, begin to get uncomfortable. I also represent people who live and work in Speightstown, who, if they hear that rain is falling in Indian ground, begin to get uncomfortable. Because we've had situations in Speightstown where there's been no rain, but houses are flooded and businesses are flooded. And the work done, and in this respect, I'm going to, there are a number of people involved, even though this supplementary speaks specifically to the work that BTI has done. But I want in this, while I'm on my feet, to commend the the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew, the former Minister of Housing, who, when we assumed office, accepted the urging to have the compulsory acquisitions done so that BTI could get ahead with the work. Because while BTI wanted to move ahead with the work, they couldn't because the land had not been acquired, the pieces that would have allowed for the expansion of the drainage canal. And so I want to thank him for the work put into that. I thank his successor, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, for his work as well. And I thank very sincerely the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South Central and the team at BTI. The canal is now wider, deeper, and maybe the one thing that everybody in St. Peter, but particularly in Spite Sound, had severe challenges with from the time the now K&R Husbands Highway was constructed is what we call the 3 small holes that stop water from getting from the higher elevations in St. Peter to the sea. And I'm happy to report that last evening while I was on site, the K&R Husbands Highway is now reopened. The 3 small holes, to use our St. Peter term, has been replaced by 2 large outlets for water. And we expect that the matter of flooding, persistent flooding in the Spite Sound area where residents from around the town, residents from Gills Terrace, residents from Godin's Alley, residents from Chapel Street, and the businesses along Church Street, and in some cases even as far south, as far west as Queen Street, that they will now be breathing much more easily because of the work done by BTI. And I am sure that in passing this resolution, particularly under this head, we can consider that the taxpayers' money, because that is the money that we are voting today, the taxpayers' money has been well spent because people are now going to be breathing easier, sleeping more soundly, and not living under the threat of every time the rain falls, the possibility of flooding. And so, Madam Chair, I am pleased and I want to offer my support to this head and the allocation of funds, particularly to the project executed by the BTI. I'm obliged.
Thank you. I move that head 13 stand part.
Question is that head 13 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 33, Ministry of Home Affairs, Information and Public Affairs, in the amount of $2,610,000.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The sums of monies being requested under this head is to provide some operational support for the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. As you would appreciate, Madam Chair, given that the economy is still in the process of recovery, normal service has not yet resumed in the context, not just necessarily of CBC, given that they have continued to provide the public with valuable information during this pandemic. But given the nature of the wider economy, it is important that whilst they're in the process of transition, that we can ensure that obviously they can continue to operate and to provide, continue to provide information for Barbadians. It has not been a easy time with respect to advertising and sponsorship and those types of activities which would ordinarily assist the corporation with respect to executing its works. And to that extent, the government is providing these resources to be able to assist the corporation within the context of their operations. And so, Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 33 stand by.
Question is that head 33 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 35, Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs in the amount of $10,890,222.
Madam Chair, I wish to indicate the purpose for Head 35, Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, to be seeking the supplementary amount of $10,890,222 to meet the costs associated with the expenditure that has been incurred. We are all aware, ma'am, that the challenges that this ministry has faced over the last couple of months has really taken a toll on the expenditure that we have been working towards because of a number of issues. First, it would have been associated with the continued challenges faced by COVID-19 and that Delta variant. And of course, the ministry deals with people generally as the major focus of what it has to do in its operations. And so the extra costs associated with PPE, making sure that those persons who are going into the senior citizens' homes, those who are dealing with the child care board, those who are dealing with all the other aspects of the ministry, the costs have been phenomenal, and therefore that has added to whatever funds were budgeted for in the last year and has caused us therefore to want to come to seek the supplementary of the funds of the people of Barbados. And therefore that has impacted, and then the ash problem, and later Tropical Storm Elsa, the freak storm first, the weekend before, and then Tropical Storm Elsa. And we are an integral part of the disaster management program to provide the social services to accommodate those who are impacted upon by the displacement, to make sure we feed them, to ensure that all of the aspects of living, including the psychosocial components of those who have been displaced, that their needs are met. And therefore, the ministry has been inundated in the sense with the expenditure, but for a good cause, because at the end of the day, we know that people matter. And they're the lives of those persons, especially the most vulnerable in our society, who would have been impacted upon. And so this $10.890 million is associated with facilitating their needs. One of the major aspects of it, ma'am, is to do with the accommodation of such a large number of persons in about 6 or so institutions, as well as some guest houses and all that. And to date, we still have not been able to facilitate everybody, but their families and friends who are accommodating others. But with God's grace, the Ministry of Housing and Lands, and of course, Urban and Rural Development, they are helping us to be able to overcome these challenges. And I know that works have already started. Some people who had minor damage, they have been taken to their homes, but the numbers are still large in the institutions that we have been working with to be able to provide the accommodation. Tropical Storm Elsa has really taken a toll on us. Also, in relation to the welfare department, in the light that we look after the social needs of those persons, many people are still displaced because they have not been able to get back employment. Those who are in accommodation there too are being looked after. Schools are closed, but children still have to be fed. Families are in the institutions such as the Harrison's Point, and others are in isolation. And therefore, the welfare department has also, through the Ministry of People Empowerment, we have also been trying to make sure that children are no longer taken down to the facility at St. Lucie with their parents because there's nobody to keep them. And so food had to be prepared for them, packages had to be prepared for them, for families to be able to feed them because the parents are ill, guardians are ill, and those poor children were suffering. So that is a part of it as well. In relation to the National Assistance Board, we have got persons in there whose pensions have got to, we did not have enough in our budget, having gone through it in the estimates of 2021, 2022, and therefore these funds that we are asking for are to assist, as well as the disabilities unit that is now inundated with so many large, and it's in a good way in the sense that there are many poor people who have been suffering comorbidities and all that, and with the high incidence of diabetes, some of them have suffered, and they require wheelchairs and arm grabs and ramps and all that, and we want some of these funds to be able to help to upgrade. In relation to the welfare department, yes, we have got challenges, but the numbers have grown exponentially in that department. Now that the tropical storm, beg your pardon, sir? May the grace of God be with you. Yes, sir. Yes, Madam Chair. And in relation to the welfare department, all is not well, as we know. Their numbers are smaller to offer the services to the public. We've been able to hire people on a temporary basis, having seen what happened with the hurricane and how the requests were being made for services to be rendered to them. And therefore, many of those persons the numbers for welfare have now grown from just over 2,000 to almost 7,000 people every week, or every month we will say, seeking to get vouchers for food, assistance for payment of utility bills, house rents. We have reached a stage now where so many families are suffering as a result of the loss of loved ones due to COVID. Many of them cannot bury their dead, and therefore they are continuing to reach out to the welfare department, and we are proud people. We love to make sure that the dignity goes with those who have passed on, and so we are also filling that void, and that does not take away from what other services were being offered even before. And so that too has caused the numbers having grown for almost $6 million more this year due to all the dislocation and everything else with those families that have to rely on the department. And I was making the point, yes, there are challenges and we must face them and fix them. And as a result of the numbers growing, the workers are really under tremendous pressure. And therefore, the acceleration of requests is not as timely as we would expect, but COVID again, and the social distancing, those persons cannot go to the office to be able to work, so there are telephone lines and other forms of communication for persons to be able to make the connections to get the services to reach them. But it does not happen as timely as we would all like, but we know for sure that things are happening, but the limited resources and the physical space that is so minimized now because of the social distancing, that is adding, but we will continue to the best of our ability to make sure that the people of Barbados, and even those who are living among us who do not have their ID cards and all that, that they too must be fed, because at the end of the day, we are one people working together to serve everybody. We had a terrible experience in 2019 where the population that were at the university that was existing in St. Philip, and the government of Barbados made sure that those students were fed and cared for during the period that hiatus was taking place. We will do the same for our nationals. And so this ministry continues to work assiduously to get the help from them. And so in the general breakdown, with the disaster social relief assistance, we did what we had to do. With the alternate accommodation, we did what we had to do. The expenses were growing because we had to feed people. Those who are in the shelters, they must get food. And therefore, the caterers' bills are high, and it is still continuing. Transportation to take them to and fro, that too would be great. I mentioned the food vouchers for meals and all that were not previously budgeted for. The professional services for the psychosocial and of course, feeding 220 people every day. We would appreciate the overall cost, therefore, is $4.9 million to go towards that particular aspect of it. And I will conclude, Mr. Speaker, by indicating, and I want to spell out a few figures, because we had budgeted and meticulously had done so when we did our estimates last year, but because of all these activities that have played into the system. Subsequent to that, so whom none of us had no control over, whether it be me, who I'm a religious person, and His Honor, the member for the leader for the opposition, who is a bishop. So he's even in a higher calling than I. We cannot judge what will happen with the changes in our climate and all that. And therefore, we did not budget for that in that respect. And we are now doing that kind of expenditure to be able to meet the needs and to make sure that persons are well cared for. And as I come to the conclusion, the transport board that we pay large amounts for the free travel for our senior citizens, that too has the estimate we've received from the transport board thus far for the year has indicated that we need another $1,750,000 to be able to meet those needs, because you will appreciate that if seniors have to go to get their vaccinations, they have to go to seek medical help, they want to still be able to go to church despite the fact, or to the places of worship, despite the fact that we are in COVID, that expenditure is there. There are some other personal emoluments because of whatever the challenges are in that respect. And so we want to continue to work and make sure that whatever funding there is spent from our ministries across the length and breadth of this country, that we meet the necessary arrangements to ensure that there's prudence and the element of accountability. And therefore, sir, I ask that head 35 to the tune of $10,892,000, $10,890,220 that has been requested in this supplementary, ma'am, that head 35 stamp out.
Question is that head 35 stamp out. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 82, Ministry of Environment and National Beautification, in the amount of $6,645,650.
Madam Chair, the sums being requested with respect to this sub-program is to help to facilitate the repair of just about 28 different sites that the National Conservation Commission monitors, or has the responsibility for supervision, I should say. And to the extent that we believe that these obviously stretch the length and breadth of Barbados, from River Bay in St. Lucie, which the honourable member for St. Lucie will be aware, Half Moon Fort. The member for Spikestown will be aware of the gazebo and the pergola and the public washrooms in his area that have not had much attention for some time. And I could go through the list, and we are all aware of the state of some of the sites that, when Barbadians visit, are often in need of some maintenance. And therefore, the sum being requested here is to be able to repurpose, and to in the same way that other elements with respect to what we've been attending to is intended to be able to help push and spur more activity around the context of the economy. And as you would appreciate, Madam Chair, that this will be an opportunity, obviously, for multiple sets of activities to take place simultaneously in order to help spur activity across the economy. But I think the perspective here, as we have done throughout government, is to ensure that not just as a matter of facilities, but to make sure that the accessibility and the ease with which Barbadians can access and enjoy leisurely activity, and do so in an environment that is clean, that is safe, and that is conducive for that enjoyment, has been part and parcel of this government's mission to be able to so do. And I know that we have seen quite a number of things being spruced up, but it's not just as a matter of spruced up. I think it's a matter of the kind of maintenance that is required to keep things in good working order. And we hope that Barbadians will recognize these investments that are being made to help with the upkeep of many of these facilities, and therefore within that vein that we are able to help to monitor and maintain and to keep these public spaces safe. Naturally, of course, Madam Chair, these, in addition to Barbadians who enjoy these facilities, obviously our visitors, when they traverse the island, equally would utilize some of these facilities as well. And therefore, we hope that whoever would be able to use these facilities will recognize that as we are completing these works, there will be some, obviously, disruption, as there always would be with respect to facilities, and therefore we will ask the patience of Barbadians as these works are being executed, just to recognize that the facilities are being upgraded. Some of them have not been touched for some time, and I use the word touched because the truth is, as you know, Madam Chair, a lot of things should have happened that did not happen, and we have had to, in a phased way, try to respond to a number of critical issues that have been long-standing, and this is yet but one of those areas that too many Barbadians have had to use some of these facilities that really could do with a significant upgrade. So we hope that these sums of monies will be able to upgrade and uplift these 28 odd facilities across the length and breadth of the country, and therefore hope that during the course of 2022, that not just with the completion of these works, but once they're done, that persons will once again be able to enjoy these facilities. Naturally, they'll be phased, but as you would appreciate, as I said, there will be some level of disruption, but disruption often means that there's progress being made, Madam Chair, and therefore I beg Barbadians to their patience as the Commission seeks to upgrade these facilities. So, Madam Chair, with those very few words, I beg to move that Head 82 stand part.
Okay. Question is that Head 82 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 83, Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, in the amount of $14,494,980.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to explain this supplementary, which falls to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security in the sum of $14,494,980. First of all, Madam Chair, there's a portion of $160,000 which goes towards supplementing the budget in the ministry for the provision of support for Hurricane Elsa. I guess many of you would know that once there's a natural disaster in Barbados, the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security is charged with the responsibility of making sure there's adequate food supply in Barbados. And therefore, when we had the passage of Hurricane Elsa, we had to make sure that there was adequate food supply for Barbadians in general, but particularly those who were in shelters, and therefore the shortfall of $160,000 is now being met under this head. In addition to that, Madam Chair, through the BANC, we have two programs. The program which is dealing with the repairs to the Portville Sugar Factory, because we anticipate that if according to projections and the weather patterns allowing, we should start the factory operations and the sugar crop in Barbados, and this should be of special interest to you, Madam. Chair, by mid-February of this year. And therefore, that would be a record start after many decades. Therefore, we are asking for $2.4 million to carry out work at Portville Factory so that we can meet our projections and to start by mid-February, weather allowing. Please note that given these times, especially with climate change, we find ourselves with very unpredictable weather patterns, and our rainfall has been no different. But weather allowing, and with us getting the parts, we have projected to start by February, mid-February, and if all goes well, we're supposed to see a total of 89,000 tons of cane being delivered by the end of March. This also is historic, given what has happened in decades, because we will never get back to where we were in the past. And due to the success of the hot water treatment in canes, we are able to increase our yields. The canes really do look a lot better now.
Yeah, they do.
And certainly if we continue on this path with the research committee being in place, I am hoping that we will continue to see significant improvements and increased yields. And then there's 2.9 million, Madam Chair, which goes to the National Erosion Control and Aquafur Recharge Program, or what we call the NECARP program. This program is a program that we started last year, where we are planting cuscus grass across rural Barbados, and this is for us to take care of soil erosion. And added to that program is a well cleaning and refurbishment program. So all of the wells that are on government plantations are being cleaned and refurbished so that we can replenish the aquifer as well. And then, of course, we are doing germplasm for lemongrass that we can use as well for erosion control and at the same time as a medicinal plant. In addition to that, 8.9 million, Madam Chair, is also being used to provide payments to the farmers, because once the crop is started, we have to pay the farmers for delivery of canes in the first week. And we have to continue this weekly, and therefore this $8.9 million is to make sure that we can meet the payments to the farmers. Traditionally, what happened, particularly leading up to 2018, was that farmers had to wait in excess of 2 years to receive their payments. And this will have an impact on the productivity and indeed the yields, because prior to 2018, a lot of the farms and plantations fell behind because they weren't able to purchase fertilizers, they were not able to purchase equipment, and many of the times if you drive across Barbados, the cane fields that you saw were so in such a horrible state that the canes literally look like small bamboo. We are trying to improve that, and in order for us to be able to improve that, we have to be able to pay the farmers on time so they can purchase their fertilizers, so they can also apply the pesticides, and at the same time invest in equipment and keep people going. And so, Madam Chair, the total that we are providing in this supplementary to make sure that the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security can provide its support to the farmers and also those who were in shelters across Barbados, as we take on our responsibility to provide support for food for Barbadians in times of disaster. We are happy to be able to meet those expectations under this Head 83. And so, Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 83 do now stand part.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The question is that Head 83 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no. Nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 87. Head 87. Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, in the amount of $4,406,713.
Madam Chair, I rise to move this head just to indicate to the chamber. You will recall, Madam Chair, that when this government came to office in 2018, we had set about obviously trying to make sure that we can repair the Barbados economy, and to the extent that we were focused on ensuring that we can generate as much local activity as possible and maintain as many jobs as possible. Government took a decision that back then all uniforms that government makes we would reserve that specific provision with respect to local manufacturers. And that was done in the context of obviously trying to make sure that as we responded fiscally, that we were in a position equally to be able to trigger and to generate as much domestic activity and to bring some level of revival and response back to a sector that had been struggling for some time. Fast forward 2 years, Madam Chair, and you realize that with the impact of the pandemic, that whilst things were starting to turn around from that perspective, what has transpired is that over the course certainly of the last 2 years, and I know that obviously we've had to all change and relate to a different form of provisioning for education to incorporate online education. What that has meant is that certainly the inventory and the cost with respect to that policy as it relates obviously to uniforms has meant that the online provision of schools certainly, and given the Delta wave this summer, has meant that those manufacturers of not just uniforms generally, but in this instance as it relates to school uniforms, have had a significant dent with respect to their sales. And therefore the monies being provisioned here really is just to offset some of the costs as it relates to the inventory that they have been carrying now pretty much, Madam Chair, for 2 years effectively in that. And in a sense, as we started this process under the program, in order to make sure then that we can keep as many jobs within that space as possible, which was the intent at the beginning, that these monies have been provisioned here for a very limited purpose, very limited provision, to be able to ensure that those manufacturers certainly of school uniforms in the country, and that they will be able to stay and keep their heads afloat, Madam Chair, as we seek to continue the transition within that space. We have been in discussions, and I know in the context not just of the Ministry of Agriculture, but certainly with BIDC and how we will be able to, I know, and Madam Chair, you and I are well aware, we've heard a lot about cotton since we were very small. But the critical thing now is to get the type of investment back into the industry such that we can transfer the value-added process from where it is being done now in Italy to be able to help transform the garment industry in Barbados and to produce the kind of quality linens. But obviously for us to get there, we need to make sure that these enterprises and the designers and all of those involved in the process, the cutters and all of these persons with the designs, that we are able to challenge, in effect, not just the manufacturers, but certainly those engineers and designers of the process, in order to help re-engineer, in a sense, a new garment industry. The government is committed to work through BIDC as well as the other supporting agencies with the garment sector and with the Ministry of Agriculture to be able to get new investment into this particular space, because we believe that it is still a respectable place of work and industry that ordinary Barbadians can play a part of and to the extent that the training for seamstresses and tailors and the like, I believe is worthy of us being able to jumpstart. As I said, COVID certainly was not kind to the process, and therefore it is our judgment that being able to support these manufacturers in this way at this time, though very limited, will allow for us to be able to get them over the line, so to speak, in order to ensure that they are still sufficiently viable entities at the end of this process in order to be able to help transform and revision that. And I know that people will recognize that we are a government of action, and therefore, notwithstanding the circumstances that we are faced with in the context of the pandemic, this is a mission that we shall complete. But in order to complete the mission in this way, it means that we have to realign the priorities at the moment to make sure that these entities that have really had very little by way of either public or real private investment or innovation for some time, that there are still a number of designers and persons within the context of the industry that we do believe that we can generate high value clothing from our indigenous cotton, which is still the best in the world, and therefore we intend to make this a priority for the recovery of the Barbados economy. And so, Madam Chair, I won't speak to the other part of the provision. The member for St. Michael Southeast will speak to that, but I just wanted to give that particular context to this particular provision, simply because, Madam Chair, this is an area that is ripe, and I know that the BIDC/Export Barbados is intending to transform the way that not just garments, but certainly industry is being done and undertaken in Barbados, and with new investment, which we hope we can bring to bear from some of the leads that we are currently pursuing. I am confident that we will be in a position over the next few years to get the new investment in, the new type of infrastructure, get the training of the cutters and all of those who do the various scaling. Size, I know that obviously for ladies, the cutting is so that the as you know, Madam Chair, the difference between a small and a medium and a large is in terms of the proportions for women are often quite delicate in terms of the fit and all of that, and therefore it is a skill, and therefore the appropriate training with respect to that will be brought to bear in relation to these matters. And just for clarity, as the other provisions relate to some repairs for in relation to Hurricane Elsa at one of the secondary schools, which completes the specific provision here. But I wanted to give the context in relation to this specific intervention, which really is the continuation of a policy that we have stood by since we came to office, and we are committed to continue to do that, to support local industry through public policy that we hope will put us in a position to expand and provide opportunities for Barbadians. And so this, along with the provision with respect to the Corrigan Prairie School, is what is being requested of Parliament at this time. And so, Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 87 stand part.
Recognize the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast and Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a private joke, colleagues. I want to thank the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central for introducing the first part of the supplementary. He and I have been in a series of discussions with the manufacturers and the retailers over the course of the last few weeks. Of course, he's the one that has responsibility for controlling the public purse, so I feel it only fitting that he should take responsibility for explaining to the public the precise details as it relates to this particular subsidy that is being proposed here this afternoon. I agree on all points in terms of the focus of government, and that this is really another example of us trying to hold the hands of those who have been affected by the pandemic. I think, the first knee-jerk reaction of people often, especially those who just want to criticize for being critical sake, is often that, we're giving out money to people and people are just going to come forward and make random claims on the public purse. But the truth of the matter is that while we have singled out in this particular head those persons who supply the uniforms across this country as a result of us being out of school for the last 2 years, the truth of the matter is that this administration has been holding the hands of many other sectors. And I think that this must not be lost on the minds of Barbadians. We heard earlier in relation to welfare how much we've been carrying the weight for welfare recipients affected all throughout our various constituencies, whether it's in the form of what has been happening at the National Housing Corporation, UDC, RDC, trying to still do the things that, despite a pandemic, we still had responsibility for. So we haven't stopped things because of the pandemic. We've actually had to accelerate programs and try to fill the gaps in relation to all of the needs that people within our society have. And I just want to say, Madam Chair, that it has not been an easy task for, I think, any of the ministries. Certainly none of the public servants have had an easy ride in terms of the demands that are being made. Every day as we start to consider these various allowances and subsidies to various persons who have articulated how they have been affected by the pandemic, you start to realize how deep the hole really is across our society. And so we are mindful that they will have the seamstresses, the odd person who might do school uniforms that would have been affected. We have the manufacturers, we have the suppliers, we have wholesalers. But we have to also, as a government, focus on a policy that is going to have the greatest impact in terms of those persons who locally we need to protect, who actually are engaged in the manufacturing of school uniforms. Now, I think that is a sound policy because while we will never please everybody, I think we have demonstrated by all that we have done that we have to start somewhere. And therefore, there are all the other mechanisms, whether it is the Household Mitigation Grant, whether it's the National Insurance Fund, all of the other things that we have done, that we've tried to find avenues for people to access something to just hold them over so that we can get the engine of the economy going in order to be able to get Barbados back on track in this very difficult time. Now, as it relates to the school uniforms, I think, coming out of our discussions, certainly with the manufacturers of school uniforms, one of the things that was highlighted is that, perhaps the discussions that should have taken place in the past with the Ministry of Education have not taken place. And primarily, it is really unfortunate that discussions regarding the change of a uniform's design would not really have been ventilated with the school uniform manufacturers from the outset. I guess it's somebody's bright idea to change the color of a tie or a pants or a shirt, but in many cases they may have a lot of stock that would have been left on their hands as a result of those decisions. So coming out of just these discussions, we've started that process of engagement with the manufacturers so that we can pretty much work with them. If there's going to be a phasing out of any designs for uniforms, that we're able to work with them. But in addition to that, what this period has also done for us, and we've seen it with how we have approached our artists within the Golden Square Freedom Park, we have recognized even more that there are persons out there who can do the design work for uniforms, that we can do things now that reflect us as a people. And perhaps the timing of this couldn't be even better given that we have now moved to a parliamentary republic. And therefore, the message must go out there as well to all of the fashion designers, potential and otherwise, that there is a space being carved out for you, certainly through education and through all the education stakeholders, to be able to produce designs and certainly be able to help us to change perhaps the way in which our uniforms look and perhaps breathe new life into what currently exists. I think that is, again, part of who we are and part of what we have to do as our responsibility as part of a new republic. Now, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to school, Madam Chair, sorry, as it relates to school, because I know I can't speak to this particular provision without briefly mentioning where we are as far as the reopening of school is concerned, especially with the second subhead on the agenda, which relates to the Coridon Parish School and the funding that is now being requested in the sum of 2.7 million, sorry, in the sum of 1.633 million in order to be able to provide for substantial repairs to the plant as a result of damage caused by Hurricane Elsa. Shortly after Hurricane Elsa wreaked havoc across Barbados, but in particular across the educational system, and in particular our schools, we were able to engage some engineers, structural and civil engineers, in order to take a look at the various school plants. And perhaps one of the ones that was very badly damaged was indeed the Coridon Parish School. Such was the extent of the damage that the report, which would have been submitted to us, indicated that there was damage to the roof structure of blocks L and S, the covered walkway at the school, as well as the canteen area due to the passage of the hurricane. We also had a request from the principal and the board to also have the engineers take a look at the library roof and also some other areas on the school plant which had been in dire need of repair. Now let me just say to this chamber that the truth of the matter is that we have 21 secondary schools, and I know that since we've come to office, we've tried to allocate through the Ministry of Finance a number of provisional sums to be able to assist with the repairs to these plants. But there are some schools that over the years have had significant neglect, and the Coridon Parish School is one such institution. I won't say why, but I will certainly say that there was a time where, depending on in whose constituency these schools were, the neglect is even more obvious. And it is unfortunate, but it is perhaps a good thing that we had a 30-seat majority, because it has given certainly myself in education an opportunity to make wrong things right. And by so doing, rather than looking at which MP I like or don't like, we have a very clear assessment of what needs to be done, and we simply go through the list and we prioritize which are the schools in the worst conditions, which are the schools that have environmental issues, and we work through that list. So for those who have attended Coridon Parish, and those who have certainly been as dismayed as I have that the amount of work that was required, yes, Honourable Member for St. Lucie, I'm sure you also share those views, that there was not enough work being done on the institution. And so we've taken a conscientious look at what needed to be done. We have recognized that on Block L, for instance, a portion of the galvanized steel roof sheets and the timber roof structure in 2 classrooms had collapsed. Sections of the limestone masonry columns that the roof members were anchored into have also cracked. On Block S, although the galvanized metal roof sheets and the timber roof remain intact, sections of the limestone masonry columns to which the roof members were anchored have similar cracks as were seen in Block L. In the walkway, for instance, we have 2 columns collapsed after the hurricane, and in addition, the galvanized metal roof sheets were severely corroded, and the roof members have deteriorated and obviously now need to be replaced. The roof area over the queuing section of the canteen has completely collapsed. Let me just say that we had also in the previous financial year spent some funds through the board trying to be able to do the necessary repairs, and regrettably that area collapsed and obviously had to be removed from the site. In the library area, there were many areas where the timber ceiling support was termite infested. Again, let me say that this is a common problem across the schools. And why? Because of a lack of a maintenance program over many years. And so while we budget every year to be able to carry out the termite infestation works, the truth of the matter is we really constantly are just playing catch up. So are we going to go back to school eventually and find termites somewhere in the school plant? Yes, you may. But we're trying to work through it in order to be able to minimize the level of disruption that has been caused over the years by these interventions for various repairs. So Madam Chair, That's just a synopsis of where we are in terms of the actual state of Courage and Parry. I'm grateful to the Ministry of Finance for allowing us the opportunity to be able to have these funds allocated. While it has taken a little while to get all of the structural and civil engineers reports in, and certainly to have the architectural designs in, we've had to do that because, again, we're not in the habit as a government of just spending money for the sake of spending money. If we are going to spend the money, we're going to make sure that we're as thorough as we possibly can be in making sure that what is being renovated, and certainly what people will enjoy thereafter, is something that will now be able to last for future generations. And it is for that reason that there is an area, a walkway, that perhaps may have served us well in the early 1900s, but it certainly is not fit for purpose for the number of students who are traversing the area, and certainly the fact that the school is prone to occasional rainfall almost every day at the institution, and therefore students need to be able to get to and fro without certainly getting wet, sir. So basically those are the areas that are under consideration under this particular supplementary. Let me just also say the estimated time is over a period of 5 months. There will be disruption in terms of those classrooms while the work is ongoing, given that we are likely to be in dealing with a phased approach to school when we finally are able to get the green light to go ahead from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We've already had those discussions with the principal and the Board of Management as to how we will better accommodate those students coming in. The reality is all students, when we return to school, will not be able to be in school all at the same time. And I think we well accept that, because we have to monitor the situation and ensure that the school plans are safe for students. We're going to have to make sure that we retest all of our protocols and fine-tune where we have to. But the intention is certainly to be able to allocate specific days for students who would be dislocated by the renovations to better be accommodated on the site. Now, we have been preparing for January of next year, and I'll just state this briefly. We have been preparing, and I always say we prepare with Plan A, with Plan B, and Plan C for the readiness for school, simply because we have been in this situation for the last 2 years, where every time we plan that we're going back to school, we then have another situation where there's either another variant or there's some difficulty that we have to encounter and we have to address. And so the preparations for 2022 are no different. While we have provided the subsidy for the industry, the school uniforms, to be able to be readily available to the public, the truth of the matter is that we want to ensure that people prepare, not go and put themselves at any unnecessary expense, but we believe that we have to prepare, and school uniforms obviously will be part of what students will be expected to return to school in from time to time. Let me just say that as minister, I have been lenient in this environment because I understand that people are experiencing financial difficulty in being able to afford the uniforms and to ensure that students are wearing uniforms even in the online classes. And we have made the necessary accommodation for those families who have not been able to afford it. I hope that with this particular incentive that we've placed here for the uniforms in this particular supplementary, that the industry is incentivized to be able to offer the lower costs as is part of our negotiation with them. But the hope is that parents start to prepare, that our teachers start to prepare, that our unions start to prepare, our principals are prepared, our ancillary staff, and indeed the Ministry of Education. We do not want our children to be losing out this amount of time that they have lost over the course of the last couple of years. And therefore, it is going to require a gigantic effort on the part of all of us to ensure that we do the right thing in order to make our schools safe. I think all of and we've been watching all of what has been happening in the rest of the region where they've had phased approach of students going back into school. We're monitoring the situation very closely, but it is our hope that we will be able to start a phased approach in 2022 to allow our students to be able to get back into school. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, just on speaking on this and the return to school, I would just want to continue to encourage parents to ensure that students become vaccinated, especially in that 12 to 17-year-old cohort. As both Prime Minister, myself, and others have indicated to the country, Obviously, it is important that, just as you've had other vaccinations, that you have those vaccinations in order to return to the school plant. And I know Ministry of Health is dealing with the regulations as it relates to that. But we have no choice because we have to create an environment in which our teachers are safe and our students are safe, and that we give the comfort to the parents as well, that their children at least will be protected in the environment in which they are. The truth is that Barbados, through its introduction of the safety monitors, who will go back into the schools again in 2022, was head and shoulders above all the rest in the region in relation to the protocols that we put in place, and long may that continue. All of the statistics show that the issues are not necessarily in the schools, but really in what people are doing in the households in relation to not wearing masks and not doing the adequate sanitization. So we are confident that once the green light is given by health, that we can get our students back in a phased way, in a safe way, with priorities being given to those categories of students who either have not been in school at all for the last 2 years, those who are getting ready to do exams, those that we know may be special needs, but we're going to have to work together, because I don't think whether it's opposition or other entities enjoy the situation in which we find ourselves. The truth of the matter is that school is that teaching environment and also that learning environment, and we really have to put ourselves in a position, sir, ma'am, that we are able to ensure that our students are able to get not only the online interaction, but that physical interaction and that social interaction that is necessary for their emotional and their physical well-being. So, Madam Chair, with those few words, I beg to move that Head 87 do no. Sorry. All right, let me allow the Honourable Member to speak. Thank you, ma'am.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to add, well, maybe not add, reinforce something in particular to the Courgeon Parish School. And it has to do with the fact that, and this is just to support the repairs and the renovations that the school needs for the students, which are the primary focus of the establishment of the institution in the first place. It is a revered institution in St. Peter. My dad attended, my sister attended. So obviously I have a vested interest over and above even my representation. But the Courgeon Parish School is also our main hurricane shelter. And it is the place where, and I work very closely with my DEO, it is where we set up our communication equipment. It is where we expect that we will have persons from the community who need to be sheltered. In St. Peter, we have only 2 Category 1 shelters. Courgeon Parish is the larger one. We have Roland Edwards as well. So Courgeon Parish for us is important. And the work that is needed will help to make that facility, like I said, not secure for students and fit for purpose for education, the primary responsibility, but it will also be there to offer the protection that is needed for those who may have to seek shelter there in a time of disaster. And I'm saying this in the context of climate change, disasters happening at increasing frequency. We just don't know when we'll have to use it. When we were there as Hurricane Elsa, well, it wasn't there exactly when it passed, but as Hurricane Elsa passed, you can imagine the uncertainty of my team members who were there, and you hear crashing around. Now, if you're in a shelter that is supposed to provide protection, and I spent a lot of time there in the evening, we put up all the shutters, everything, but those who are there in the dead of the night, well, early in the morning, 4 day morning is what we call it, I'm not sure what it is called in St. George North, but 4 day morning, you start to hear things happening. You begin to feel, when you are to be taking information from residents who are losing galvanite and losing peeling and that kind of stuff, you are beginning to wonder what is happening either in the building you're in or on the outside. And I just want to thank the Ministry of Education, the Honourable Member for St. Michael's Southeast, the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, for recognizing, I'm not going to get into the neglect, but I think moving forward, focusing on coercion parry, and I'm not being my usual parochial self, and to add that there needs to be focus, I believe, on those, well, yes, thank you very much. It's always good to hear Minister responsible for the honourable members of the purse strings. He mentioned Alma Paris. I feel very happy when I hear the honourable member for Christchurch East Central advocating, because I know that that means that something is happening. But I think there needs to be a focus on those institutions that double in their purpose and provide shelter in times of disaster. And I would just want to suggest that understanding that the primary role is educating, wherever the education intersects with the need to provide shelter in emergencies, that we should also focus on those institutions. And with those remarks, Madam Chair, I am obliged to you. No, I didn't feel.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 87 stand par.
Question is that head 87 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 93, Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, in the amount of $3,150,750.
Madam Chair, this sum of money is to be used to continue our program of rejuvenation at the Supreme Court and the registration, the old registration department. You would be aware that this government started a significant rejuvenation program because we had so many buildings that were unusable or were not in use, and we were having to pay rent at other locations for those buildings, or having to relocate people to other cramped conditions. So we made a decision as a government to be able to bring a lot of these buildings back into use, and this is part of it. The Supreme Court and registration, and now also the Old Town Hall, that is by far the largest rejuvenation program that we're doing, by far the largest and most expensive. So far we have done the Sanitation Service Authority, and as you would recall, Madam Chair, the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology is now in occupation, and that rejuvenation has worked reasonably well. There's some kinks that have to be worked out still within the building, but it is now in use after years of being completed and not being used, but yet still having a cost to the government of this country. So now for the first time it is being used, and therefore we're getting a return on the investment that we put in that building. The next building we did was the Gatehouse, and that is now being used by the Building Standards Department of the Ministry of Transport Works and Maintenance. And I'm very happy to say that was at a cost of about $290,000 in that range. And that they were able to house them now in that building, which has been important as well, because it gave way then for the facility of the new fire service to be built where they were located in the past. So it was not only to bring a building into use, but also to give way for a new opportunity at a new building. The third building that we started, and it's about 95% complete, is the welfare, the old welfare department on Country Road, opposite my office. I check it every day by virtue of looking out of my window. And that is all of 98% complete. The only thing we're waiting for is the air condition, which is, I'm told, in the port to be delivered and installed. And once that is done, that will be the third one that we would have completed. We have in progress, as you'd be aware, and the clerk is next to you, the Parliament building. That is another very big one and expensive. But it was absolutely essential to do a total restructure of that whole facility and to get that back into tip-top shape for all of us here. The Next one that we're hoping to start is the former town planning building at Block B, the Garrison. And we're also looking at building 2 at the former Barbados Water Authority building, as well as the Baco building in Magazine Lane. So we have a lot on our program to be able to get these buildings done. We're reasonably happy with the progress at the Supreme Court. It is moving a little slow because we work within a box. And that box has become, between the pandemic, the volcanic, and the cyclonic, all 3 of those together, we've still continue to work to get all of these buildings done or in significant progress on them every single day. And we've had 1 or 2 overruns because we found more termites, or we found a little bit more structural damage than we anticipated in 1 or 2, but we're progressing. And I have no doubt that once we're finished the Supreme Court and registration and the Old Town Hall, let me say the Old Town Hall is a building 280 years old. It's one of the oldest buildings in all of Bridgetown. One of the oldest in all of Bridgetown. And we're endeavoring to get that one on the move as well. So lots on the agenda, lots we're trying to do, but this money of $3,150,750 would go a long way to helping us achieve that objective of bringing the Supreme Court and the registration building, and then also the Old Town Hall, back into appropriate use. And therefore, Madam Chair, I'll ask that Head 93 in that sum, $3,150,750 stamp part.
The question is that Head 93 stamp part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I do know, beg that you report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one money resolution in Standing Finance Committee.
Question is that I do now report to His Honour the Speaker the passage of resolutions in Finance Committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committee says reporting the passing of one money resolution in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be read the first time.
Question is that the resolution be read the first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be read a second time.
The question is that the resolution be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be agreed to.
The question is that the resolution be agreed to. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Recommittal of papers. Minister Strong.
Honourable member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I am commanded to lay the Public Finance Management Procedural Fiscal Rules 2021.
Revert to government business.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, we have come to the end of today's sitting. We have also come to the end of government business for the year 2021. I want to take this opportunity to thank all honourable members and certainly all of the staff of Parliament, the clerk, all honourable members who assist us to be able to carry out the business of Parliament, the ushers, all who administratively allow us to be able to function in this space. I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't also thank what is now the Barbados Police Service under a parliamentary republic for their continued vigilance here with us over the course of the last 2 years. I want to thank as well all of the catering staff, all of the security, and certainly all of the landlord and the board here at this entity for facilitating us throughout this process. We have been here longer than we intended. We are all anxious to get back to Bridgetown and to be back in the House of Parliament in town. But again, like everything else, Mr. Speaker, we have had to adjust and we have had to change focus and direction, and we've had to pretty much work in circumstances that none of us could ever have intended that we would have had to work in. So the inconvenience of being in this place is exactly that. It is but an inconvenience, but it has not stopped any of the honourable members in this place from being able to conduct the business of the people of this country. And for that, I really want to say thank you to all for the journey that we have been on in the course of the last 2 years in particular, the time that we've been here at this particular location. I look forward, Mr. Speaker, for us being able to get back to Bridgetown. I know that those repairs are ongoing. We've been speaking with the clerk to ensure that they can be expedited even more quickly so that we can get back to the normal place that we are accustomed to and allow the opportunity for others to enjoy this particular location. But Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up for this year, I want to say that in this season of sharing and caring and giving, the season in which we celebrate Jesus Christ, and we celebrate in a spiritual way, and it's a way of reflection. I think that it is important that we appreciate and understand that when calls are made on us as leaders to denounce things that can affect the very fabric of our society and disrupt the life that Barbadians are accustomed to, we must not take that lightly, Mr. Speaker. And we find ourselves in a very difficult situation now, sir, as we come to the end of this year. As we come to the end of a year where we've just been doing all this reflecting on who we are, what we stand for, and what we must fight for, sir, where we're calling on our respective leaders to no longer stand in silence, but to denounce those who seek to prevent people who have put their lives forward to help others, to allow them to be able to do what they have stepped forward to do. I don't think, sir, and I want my voice to be on record of it, I do not think that if the comments attributed to the honourable member in the other place who leads the trade union movement, the Unity Movement Party, if what has been attributed in relation to saying, going against the grain of what we stand for as a people, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, then, sir, I stand here to denounce that as well as a member for St. Michael's Southeast, as a proud Barbadian and one who understands that the people who are most vulnerable are affected by any leader in this country saying to its base, saying to its constituents or others that people who are vulnerable do not matter, that they are not your problem. That is not the spirit or the season that we are in, sir. And it is not about what has been alleged that we are being political, but it is basically saying to the country that there are some things that are right and there are some things that are wrong. And I don't think that it is good enough, sir, that there are some amongst us who would want to claim they didn't consult with their members, that they're not aware of the details of what may have transpired or what was alleged to have been said. I think that we all know that it is as simple as picking up the phone and calling and seeking clarity. It is as straightforward as trying to seek the recording of the Zoom call on which the comments were made. It is as simple as disassociating yourself from those comments, sir, as far as you possibly can, because right is right and wrong is wrong, sir. And it does not, for me, I often speak of the hypocrisy sometimes of our society, but I do not understand, as what I consider still a young person, how we can say in one breath that we are so spiritual and so reflective and so about people, and then in the next breath we allow our young people to believe that having taken an oath to care and to look after the most vulnerable in our society, it is okay to say to them, for no good reason whatsoever, sir, that it's not their problem if, they don't come to work. It is the government's problem. It is the hospital's problem. Sir, I want to say that I hope that those who know better will do better, and that the rest of our society joins the Barbados Labour Party, joins this government in its approach taken to those sentiments being expressed by people who hold political office or who hold themselves out as in any way being part of the leadership of this country. We have worked too hard to save our people and to keep Barbados safe. And we have no issue with people who have a difference of opinion on vaccination. We've made accommodation for that, sir. But to send a message to our youth, to send a message to this society, and to send a message to the world that we stand for nothing, or that we are going to allow a position to be taken that significantly disadvantages the most vulnerable in our society, sir, I want to say that it is wrong and it needs to be denounced. So, sir, if that is not, to the best of my knowledge, the spirit in which this season is celebrated, for me, I don't need a season in order to celebrate life. I don't need a season to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. I don't need a season to know right from wrong. As far as I'm concerned, I live every day for that. But since this is the season of the reflection of what I've just said, sir, I believe that it is a season that those who profess to follow that path and to champion from the highest mountaintop their belief in those basic principles, that they would do well, sir, to reflect at this time and to ensure that the right messages are put out there to this country by the leadership of this country. And sir, with that, I want to wish all honourable members a blessed Christmas, a blessed holiday season. For those who don't celebrate it, again, just to have a safe and enjoyable and pleasant holiday. I think that a lot of and I just want to acknowledge the work of our public servants, because I know that they have had to work extremely hard over this last year in particular to keep certainly the ministries afloat, and it has not been in any way an easy task for any of them. We are a very demanding government. We have a very demanding leader, sir, and therefore we know that they have had to work beyond the call of duty, been on many Zoom meetings, and had to rise above the call of duty in order to be able to give of service to this country, and for that I'm truly indebted. I also want to say, sir, on closing, I want to express my appreciation on behalf of this administration for the Honourable Prime Minister and leader of this country for all that she has done for us over the course of this last year in placing Barbados on the map, restoring the confidence that is necessary to be able to take us out of the doom and gloom that we have found ourselves in, sir, and to give us at least that little bit of hope again that Barbados can punch above its weight. I don't take the phrase lightly by Kofi Annan, but I believe that we are back on track in terms of showing the rest of the world that we as Barbadians are ready to punch above our weight yet again and to take our place on the national stage, sir. So again, I want to thank all and to wish everyone certainly a blessed and enjoyable holiday season. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaking on the adjournment, Mr. Speaker, may I start by applauding you and appreciating the mature and balanced way in which you have presided over the affairs of this chamber, and to wish you every good wish for the season and indeed beyond, because I understand there's another season just beyond the season, which is more. If that is true, I don't believe it, but if it is true, I wish you well in that season as well. And let me just also take the opportunity to join the Honourable Leader of Government Business, Minister of Education, Honourable Member for St. Michael's Southeast, in wishing all well for the holiday season. It is more than just a holiday season. It is indeed a season rich with blessing and meaning, and certainly the clerks at the table who have facilitated all of our meetings here and guided us wisely and advisedly so. May I wish them well, and of course the administrative staff of the Parliament, the technical people, the hospitality people, the security officials, both the private, the public ones, as well as the private ones, and the official police service, all of those who have contributed to pleasant experiences here while we have come to do the people's business. I really want to wish each member here well, irrespective of where you stand on political issues. I sincerely wish all well for the Christmas season and beyond as the new year beckons. May God bless you and yours in all that you do. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Leader, I do believe that you have to speak to a specific adjourn date.
Thank you, sir. I therefore beg to move the adjournment of this House until Tuesday, the 11th of January, 2022 at 10 a.m.
Before I formally adjourn this Honourable Chamber, I wish to thank all persons in the main for subscribing to the level of civility that I exhorted you from the beginning to exhibit in this Honourable Chamber. I hope that it has been a worthwhile year for all of you, and that you have the blessings of my family, that is my immediate family, parliamentary family, for the entire year and for the ensuing year, and hope that when you return, that you return having had a very restful, festive season, renewed and invigorated for the tasks ahead in 2022, and that whatever you do, that you do in moderation. Always remembering that when we came to this hallowed place, we came here not for ourselves, but to represent the interests of this country at large. And that in this pandemic that we have survived and continue to endure, that we remember the less fortunate, and that whatever we do, whatever prayer that we have, that we bear that in mind, and that we strive to put aside our differences, remembering that at all times this is our country, and that regardless of political affiliation, that we must strive and endeavor to do what is right for Barbados, because this is the place that we call our fair land, and that we must strive at all times to make it a safe but a better place to live. And if we have that at the back of our heads, we can only do better for our people I hope that you have a most enjoyable Christmas, but knowing full well that it's just a couple of days away, and that after Christmas, there is a lot of hard work still to be done that must be done. And if we put all of this together, bearing in mind our traditional Christmas blessings, etc., that we should all be well and safe for 2022. May God bless all of us. The question is that this Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until the 11th day of January 2022 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until the 11th day of January 2022 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.